All right, welcome to another video. This is going to be the first real video in the BGP playlist. So I've got the routers set up now. Before I wanted to make it nice and clean and tidy, I kind of got a little greedy in that regard because I needed to shut everything down and delete these, and that kind of wasted a lot of time. But you can see I was able to figure out how to stack them in a neater way. To do that, all you do is right click and you can change which one appears over the other one just by selecting raise or lower a layer. You can change how things are displayed there. So that's a feature to be familiar with. So this video will be kind of a little bit of a just kind of endurance video where I'm just going in and making all the configurations. So I've got the same wiring setup that I had before, where it's 0, 0, 0 to the left, 0, 0, 1 to the right. So this is going to be 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0. And we can take a look at the config I've got on here now. This is just the regular old config. I went ahead and between videos deleted all of the configuration. So now this video will just be entering in all the configuration for this lab. And one of the commands that is missing on here, just because it's an optional command, but it's one I definitely recommend everyone go ahead and enter, is a description, so that you don't have to wonder which address it is and you can have more useful things to look at. So it doesn't have to be anything super fancy. If you're out in prod, you are going to have, hopefully if you're working for a company that is going to make your life easy, you are going to have a pretty complicated description that might be a number of characters, certainly more than 4 characters I have here. So that's something that might jump out if you are on your first day on the job and something, a really long detailed description with all sorts of different kinds of standards and meanings behind it. So if you're on the first day on the job and you see that and you don't already know, one of the things you can do is reach out to your coworkers. Hey, is there a description of the description? Like what do all these mean? Is this notated somewhere? How can I use the descriptions to help me understand the network? Because most places in production will have some sort of scheme so that you can do that. But if you're just in the lab, it doesn't have to be too well thought out. Just a simple description to help you orient yourself is all that is needed. You can see how useful the hotkeys are, because I was about to type this whole thing out. Again, even though I am a decent typist, that's still going to take a little bit of time for even somebody who's a good typist. So just up arrowing and doing Control W gets me right to where I would have been if I typed this all out. Saves me carpal tunnel, saves me time. It's just a win-win thing to just know a simple hotkey and save yourself a lot of time. So just as I did before, And likewise, as I was using Control W, I can also use Control A and then Control D, D, D to delete set. And instead of doing set, I can do edit. And now I'm in this area of the config. So it's much fewer things I need to type to enter in the command. All right, that looks good. I mean, part of the fun of it is if I make a mistake, I can go through and troubleshoot that later, make a whole video out of it. So I'm not going to check that too carefully. Looks like I do have an issue here with my routing options where I've got an address invalid for router ID. So let's go into edit routing options and take a look at what I have here. So it looks like I have, oh, I can't use a address. I can't use a loopback address, or sorry, well, yeah, a home address, 127.0.0.1. I can't use that address for the router ID. So that's kind of too bad. I'm surprised that this documentation would say to use that. I don't think it's worth a downvote though, because it could be possible on different kinds of gear. It could be just unique to the image, the version that I'm using, the image that I'm using. So in their topology they use for this, it very well could be a valid address. I am kind of curious to learn more about autonomous system numbers on Junipers. So I think I'm going to do a quick preview of that. Juniper autonomous system. So here's a write-up on it. And we can see that, okay, and this is actually not the autonomous system that's having the issue. It's the address for the router ID. So Juniper routing options router ID. Hopefully I can get a, there we go, tech library write-up. So maybe there's some information in here about what kinds of router IDs are not valid. But as far as I can see, yep, it looks like there's nothing in here saying that it's invalid. So I'm kind of curious why it is invalid on mine. It's definitely something that doesn't seem to be expected behavior. But I can use a custom address in hexadecimal A is 10. So I can just set up my own address. So I'll just set that to 10.10.10.10 to represent the binary form of the hexadecimal for 10. Let's commit that. Okay, so that's a valid thing I can enter there. Moving on to B. All right, so there's my descriptions, which are not listed here, but it's just really good practice to always have useful descriptions that you can use to help yourself. And let's verify that their port conventions are the same as the ones I'm using. So it looks like they've got 2.2 on the port connected to A. So for me, that would be port 000. Let's see if 2.2 is on 000. Yep, so we're using the same port conventions. So we're gonna have the same issue here where it's not gonna accept this special kind of IP address space, the 127. If you look up IP address space, you can see that that whole block up to the, I believe the /8 is set aside special. So let's take a look. So this is IPv6. I don't see anything special. Maybe the Wikipedia will be more verbose. So yep, it's the /8. So everything from 127.0.0.0 to 127.255.255.255, that is all a special reserved subnet that cannot be used for public IP addresses. It's used as an address that refers to itself. You'll see kind of t-shirts. There's no place like 127.0.0.0 because that's kind of a self-referential IP address. So you can kind of consider it like home, but it's more self-referential. I'm surprised there's not like more information about that specifically in here. That's kind of, I think, something that is important to know when learning about IP addresses. It's just which are for public, which are set aside that you can't use for a public address. So here they have all the private IP address space, but in addition to that, they're going to be special address space like experimental, and then this 127/8 subnet that is reserved for other uses. So kind of surprised that's not there. So it looks like this server vault or network world might have some information. Unfortunately, it's not on Wikipedia, or if it is, it's not easy to find on their page, not through a simple control F or anything like that. But yeah, it's just something to know if there's any beginners watching and wonder why is nobody using the 127/8 subnet, especially when there's so many, that when that IPv4 space is so starved. It's because it's for special use. All right, so let's keep going. So we've got two BGP groups here, both external connections, both eBGP. All right, so here's all of the config, and we know it's not gonna pass because that's an invalid router ID because that /8 subnet is reserved. So it can't be used for loopbacks, but B in hexadecimal is equivalent to 11 in decimal. So let's just use all 11s. All right, and now this will commit. So on to router C. And this is kind of interesting. It looks like they've got two interfaces here, each with a IP address for router C, but it looks like router C only has one link. So let's see which interface has this 100.2. So it looks like this is the one that's going to be used. So that's interesting that there's going to be an IP address on a link that's not going to be cabled up. So I guess I'll just use interface G001 to represent that one, and I'll just say, I've got to go into edit mode, and I'll set a description that just says uncabled, unwired int. I think that'll be plenty descriptive. And that's something to know as well. This is a big difference between Cisco and Juniper. If you were on a Cisco and you wanted to set a description, and this is true for some other things, and I want it to be unwired int, I wouldn't need to wrap it around quotes. But you can see here, if I don't wrap it around quotes, I do have issues. So it's only safer to wrap it around quotes when you're on a Juniper especially. But even on a Cisco, you can do that without issue, I believe. But that'll make it so that you can do spaces. Another thing you'll see for any beginners watching is this underscore character used a lot. That'll get rid of any need for spaces, and it shows you the same thing. And then you can, of course, logically partition out your descriptions into different sections that all have unique relevance. So you can use whatever special character you would wish. But if you want to use spaces, you're going to need to use quotes. And it looks like an extra command got on there, so I'll just get rid of that. All right, so moving on. Another issue here. I don't think this is worth a downvote. You know what? I think it's worth a downvote. I don't know. Kind of a funny thing happened to me today. I actually received further notification from Juniper. They appear to not have taken me off of their internal communications, and they really, really like my downvotes. So I think I'm going to keep them coming. I mean, I do my best to, of course, only point out what is really egregious and might prevent somebody else from finishing it. But unfortunately, there are a lot of typos. But I must say, I really do appreciate the documentation. Cisco really doesn't have kind of documentation as freely available and easy to search on Google and stuff as Juniper does. And for the most part, it is very clear and easy to follow. You know, there's just going to be typos and mistakes in pretty much anything you look at. So for the most part, I really do appreciate the documentation by Juniper, and really I'm only downvoting because I want to leave feedback. For the most part, I definitely am grateful to Juniper for having this available for people who want to learn their gear. So set routing options, router ID 127.0.0.3, which is going to fail out, but we'll change it to 12.12.12.12. So from what I understand, kind of the purpose of this exercise is going to be looking at the autonomous systems and kind of making sure that your 4-byte ASN numbers are a certain way, because that's of course the topic of the exam that this is covering, this lab, or that I picked it to help me learn and prepare for. So it looks like this gets assigned an IP address, but it's not, well, I mean, it makes sense because these are all for core links. So maybe this will go to like some CE or some sort of hypothetical like that. But right now I just have the description unwired int on it, and then I have that on there. So the port's going to be down. Another really interesting thing to note as far as the differences between Juniper and Cisco. So in Cisco, oh, and of course, here's the issue where it can't be that 127. So I actually am going to downvote about that. Sorry to Norman, but I just want to help the next person who's going to come through and use this for their exam. So 127/8 address space is not valid for use on as a router ID. There we go. So helping them out over on Juniper, they love it. All right, so let's keep moving. So I'm going to go to edit routing options, and I'm going to do a show pipe display set relative and delete that router ID. So this is going to, C is the equivalent of 12 in hexadecimals. So we'll just go with 12s. And we'll commit this, and I'll continue to explain kind of one of the big differences between Cisco and Juniper. If I do a show route on that subnet that's on that link that's down, we can actually take a look. Show int terse type match GE dash. So here's another interesting thing. So there's two interesting things. The one thing I wanted to demo, unfortunately, I probably won't be able to demo because of this. But if I do show FPC, or sorry, show chassis, FPC, I wish it were just pronounced chassis. That would make my life so much easier. But unfortunately, it's pronounced chassis, so I will say chassis. But you can see it's having issues with the forwarding plane. If I go over here and I do this same command, show chassis FPC, it's online. And same with over here. So show FPC online. So I've got issues with the forwarding pane here. Unfortunately, there's things I can do. Let me do a pipe refresh one and see if I can just sever the link and reestablish the link. Maybe that'll do it. So as I said before, kind of a nifty thing about Juniper is they have the control traffic separated from the customer traffic. Control plane is different from the forwarding plane. And when you get one device, you're essentially getting two devices that are cabled together. So here you can see it's not even running because I took that link out. Now it's not responding to management requests because it's starting to detect that link. So now we'll get different states, and hopefully it'll go into online state and not get stuck at present state. Right now it's at empty. So we'll just see what it does there. Hopefully it can make it all the way to online. It looks like I'm no longer getting it every second. It's every few seconds. I'll just restart this. Still an empty. So I can try restarting just the forwarding plane. And look at my server's view and see if that's actually restarting. Oh, sorry, that's going to be the topology summary. So you could see it did not respond to that, or appeared not to. We'll try stopping it and restarting it. Another thing to kind of know about GNS, which can be pretty useful, is when you go to the config. So these actually do have a terminal, just like this has a terminal, but it's quite a bit different. And it's really nothing that's going to be on the exam, nothing useful for me to look at. So when I go to configuration, I can choose the console type, and I go ahead and choose none, because I'm not going to be in the terminal for any reason. And now I can hit this button up here and open a console to all nodes, but I won't be opening it to these nodes that I don't want a console to ever for any reason, except for perhaps like troubleshooting. But then I can just go and enable it and open it for that one. So that's a really good trick to know. If there's any device you won't be going into the console on, and that's definitely going to be the case for Juniper, since you're going to have forwarding planes and there'll be no need to go into the console on there. You can just go to configure and then go to general settings, console type, change it to none, apply OK, and then you can use this button without connecting to gear that is unnecessary to connect to. So it's kind of a trick of the trade. Let's start this and hopefully it will go. It looked like there was an issue or it was trying to reconnect. So that might work. Another thing we can always do, it's really not that big of a deal, is to just delete the forwarding plane and just add a new one in. It's kind of more of a bigger thing if you're deleting the control plane, because then you'll need to set that you won't be able to go in and use the CLI, because even though I don't have a forwarding plane anymore, you can see subsystem is not running, not responding to management requests. I can still use the CLI. At least I thought I could. I'm not able to use it now. Oh, yeah, I'm able to use it. So you can see I can still use the CLI even though I don't have a forwarding plane. So the cost of just deleting and re-adding that forwarding plane is much lower than for the control plane, because I can still do a lot of what I wanted to do. So, and let's rename it to C. There we go. And now cable it up. I'm going to need 2 cables. I'm going to need one for the connection to B. And unfortunately, the GNS naming is quite a bit different, but you just subtract 2 to whatever it is. So this is GE2, and then you might think, oh well, is this -2, -1? No, these are special internal links. They're going to show up as EM links, and I can show those. So first, I'm just going to wire this up. Then I'm going to wire up this EM1 to EM1 here, which is listed as ETH1. And then I'm going to start to this. And while this is coming up, I can do a show interfaces terse. And we can see here's this special EM1 link with all these special IP addresses on them. This is the port that is used to link the control plane with the forwarding plane. So it's a really kind of good thing to know that that is the case with Junipers, and to know specifically which one this is. And you can tell because of this IP addressing information. When I first booted this up and was kind of figuring out how to use VMX images, I went ahead and made the mistake, and I want to save you, if you're planning to do this, from making that same mistake. And I wired it up to ETH0 instead of ETH1. So it's going to be ETH1. There's also a special port here, FXP0. You might be tempted to try to use that to connect the control plane and the porting plane, but that's actually a special port for out-of-band management to the device. So that's not going to be a valid port you can use to connect the forwarding plane. All right, so hopefully that forwarding plane is up. Looks like it's still empty. So I'm not sure why it's not detecting it. This might be an issue for between videos, but it's going to need to get resolved at some point. So yeah, I think it's an issue between videos. So I'm going to need to maybe reboot the whole topology. I mean, I can, of course, just do that right now. It's been a while since I've done this, so it's good to see this again. So I like to open it in a new tab. Otherwise, it's harder to use because it's all stuck to this window. So it often spills off, and you can't use it. So luckily, you can just use the GUI here. You don't have to go into the CLI every time. It's going to save a little bit of time. But yeah, I think I'm going to end the video there because I've got to get that forwarding plane to come online. I really can't do anything until that comes back up. So hope you got something out of it. I think there was something interesting, just kind of, and then I'll make sure in the next video to kind of explain that difference between Cisco's and Juniper's regarding how routes show up in their routing tables. So stay tuned. Thank you.